Hey guys, tonight we're exploring a story that everyone in history should know. The story is The Boring Night Routine of 18th Century Midwives. You get comfortable. Take a moment, like the video, and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Boring Night Routine of 18th Century Midwives. Imagine the village long after the sun has disappeared beyond the distant fields. The last soft colors of evening have faded from the sky, leaving only a deep blanket of blue stretched over quiet cottages and winding country paths. A cool breeze slips gently through the trees, carrying the familiar scent of damp earth, fresh hay, and smoke rising lazily from stone chimneys. Somewhere nearby, a dog gives a single sleepy bark before settling once again beside the warm hearth. Tonight, you are not a noble resting behind castle walls, nor a wealthy merchant enjoying the comforts of a bustling city. Instead, you find yourself walking beside one of the most ordinary yet remarkable women of the 18th century. She is a village midwife. Her name has long been forgotten by history, but her work quietly shaped countless lives. Her evenings are rarely filled with celebration. More often, they are calm, repetitive, and surprisingly uneventful. It is a routine built not on excitement, but on patience. Night after night, she prepares herself for the possibility that someone may knock upon her door before dawn. Some nights, no one comes at all. Picture yourself standing outside her modest cottage. The walls are made of timber and plaster, worn smooth by many seasons of rain and wind. The roof, thick with thatch, rustles softly whenever the breeze passes over it. A small square window glows with warm candlelight, inviting but simple. There is nothing grand about the house. Everything has been arranged for usefulness rather than beauty. As you step inside, the air feels warmer. A fire crackles quietly in the hearth, though it has already begun to burn lower than it did during supper. Shadows dance gently across the wooden beams overhead. The room smells of beeswax candles, dried herbs hanging from the ceiling, freshly baked bread, and smoke that has settled into the timber over many years. The midwife has already finished her evening meal. Like many people living in the countryside, she eats simply. A piece of coarse bread rests upon the wooden table beside a bowl that once held vegetable broth. Perhaps there was a little cheese if the family had been fortunate enough to keep milk from their cow. Meat is uncommon on ordinary evenings. Most families save it for special occasions or feast days. She does not rush. There is almost never any reason to hurry unless a labor has already begun. Instead, she wipes the table carefully with a damp cloth. Every crumb is brushed into a small wooden bowl for the chickens waiting outside tomorrow morning. Nothing useful is wasted. In villages across 18th century Europe, careful habits are as valuable as coins. Imagine the gentle scrape of wooden bowls being stacked together. Listen to the soft sound of iron hooks as cooking pots are returned to their places beside the fireplace. These ordinary noises mark the end of another quiet day. Outside, darkness grows deeper. Without electric lights, the village changes completely after sunset. Only scattered candle flames glow through tiny windows. The roads become little more than dark ribbons crossing open countryside. Trees become silent shapes against the night sky. Most people have already gone indoors because candles are expensive and daylight is precious. The midwife understands this darkness well. She has walked these paths hundreds of times, sometimes beneath a bright full moon, sometimes through heavy rain, sometimes guided only by a small lantern and the sound of her own footsteps. Before thinking about sleep, she checks her supplies. This is one of the least dramatic parts of her evening, yet one of the most important. A missing cloth or an empty oil flask may become a serious problem later in the night. Her basket rests beside the wall. It is not magical. It is not mysterious. It is simply practical. Inside are folded linen cloths that have been washed as carefully as possible. Cleanliness in the 18th century is not understood through the language of bacteria or germs. Those discoveries still lie in the future. Yet experienced midwives know from long observation that fresh linens, clean hands, and tidy surroundings often lead to better outcomes. Knowledge grows slowly through experience. Generation after generation, women pass along quiet lessons learned through countless births. The midwife unfolds each cloth. She feels the fabric between her fingers. If any piece seems worn beyond use, she quietly sets it aside for another purpose around the house. Good linen is too valuable to discard completely. Next, she checks her candles. A short candle is placed carefully inside her lantern. If someone arrives at midnight asking for help, she cannot spend precious minutes searching for light. The small flame flickers gently as she tests the lantern's glass door. Satisfied, she blows out the candle again. The room grows slightly darker. Only the fireplace now fills the cottage with its warm orange glow. Picture yourself sitting quietly near the fire while she reaches toward bundles of herbs suspended from the ceiling beams. Lavender, rosemary, chamomile, mint. Different villages favor different plants. Some herbs are brewed into comforting drinks. Others simply freshen the air or soothe anxious minds. Many traditional remedies have been handed down through families for centuries. Some offer genuine comfort. Others survive mainly because custom gives people reassurance during uncertain moments. The midwife understands the importance of calm. Fear can make difficult moments feel even heavier. A gentle voice often helps as much as any herb. She ties several small bundles together with linen thread and places them beside her basket. If they are needed tomorrow, they will already be prepared. Outside, an owl calls softly from somewhere near the woods. Its slow, patient voice drifts through the cool night air. The village remains peaceful. Occasionally, distant footsteps echo along the road before fading once more into silence. Perhaps a traveler has arrived late. Perhaps a neighbor is returning from visiting family. Soon, those sounds disappear as well. You find yourself noticing just how quiet life becomes without engines, electricity, or glowing screens. Only nature continues its endless conversation. Wind brushes through leaves. Crickets sing from the grass. Somewhere nearby, horses shift gently inside a stable. The rhythm of the night feels slow enough to breathe with. The midwife takes advantage of this peaceful hour. She mends clothing beside the fire. Many evenings are spent repairing aprons, stitching worn sleeves, or reinforcing the straps of her work basket. Needlework is familiar to almost every woman of her generation. Even after long days, small practical tasks continue until bedtime. Her fingers move confidently through the fabric. She barely needs to look. Years of practice have made each movement almost effortless. The fire settles lower. Occasionally she adds another small piece of wood, careful not to waste fuel. Firewood demands hard labor to gather, cut, and dry. Every log represents many hours of work. Nothing is burned carelessly. As the evening grows later, she glances toward the window. There is no clock hanging upon the wall. Many rural homes own none. Instead, people judge time by habit, darkness, church bells, and the position of the moon. The body itself becomes a clock. It knows when to wake. It knows when to rest. For the midwife, however, sleep is always uncertain. A knock may come at any hour. She cannot allow herself to become too deeply settled. Imagine living with that quiet expectation every single night. Not fear, simply readiness. She lifts her sturdy shoes from beside the doorway. Rather than placing them far away, she sets them close to her bed. Her cloak hangs nearby. Her basket remains packed. The lantern is ready. Every small preparation may save valuable minutes before a long walk through darkness. In larger towns, some midwives live only a few streets from the families they serve. In villages, the journey may cross muddy fields, narrow bridges, forests, or streams. Winter snow can hide the road completely. Autumn rain may turn familiar paths into thick mud. Still, when called, she goes. Tonight, however, no one has arrived. The quiet continues. She kneels briefly beside her chair in silent prayer, as many people of her time do before sleep. The words are simple and familiar, repeated so often that they flow as naturally as breathing. She prays for the families she has helped, for mothers still waiting to give birth, and perhaps for strength if another difficult night should come. Faith offers comfort where certainty cannot. The fire is now little more than glowing embers. Soft warmth still fills the room, though cooler air begins to gather near the floor. She covers the embers carefully so that the fire may be easier to awaken in the morning. Then she carries the final candle toward her sleeping place. The flame trembles gently with each careful step. Long shadows stretch across the walls before disappearing behind her. The bed itself is modest. A straw mattress supports layers of blankets carefully patched over many years. The pillow is filled with feathers gathered little by little, never all at once. Luxury is rare. Comfort comes from familiarity instead. She removes her outer clothing slowly, folding each garment neatly for tomorrow. Linen worn close to the skin is precious, because washing clothes requires considerable effort. Every piece is cared for with quiet attention. Before lying down, she listens. Only silence answers. No hurried footsteps. No anxious voices. No urgent knocking upon the wooden door. Just the peaceful breathing of a sleeping village wrapped beneath the endless stars. She gently blows out the candle. Darkness settles across the cottage. For a few quiet moments, nothing happens at all. The village sleeps. The fields rest beneath the cool night air. And the midwife closes her eyes, knowing that at any moment before sunrise, another life may quietly ask her to begin walking once more. The night grows even quieter after the last candle has disappeared into darkness. For a few peaceful moments, the little cottage seems almost invisible beneath the broad 18th century sky. Only a faint glow from the dying embers hints that someone is resting inside. Outside, a thin layer of mist slowly begins to settle over the nearby fields, softening the outlines of fences, hedgerows, and narrow footpaths that weave between scattered homes. You find yourself listening to the steady rhythm of the countryside. There is no distant hum of traffic. No electric lights brighten the horizon. Instead, the village belongs entirely to the sounds of nature. Crickets continue their patient song. Somewhere beyond the orchard, a fox moves quietly through the grass. From time to time, an owl glides silently between ancient trees, searching the moonlit ground below. Inside the cottage, the midwife sleeps lightly. Years of experience have trained her to wake at the smallest disturbance. She does not sleep with anxiety, but with quiet awareness. Even in dreams, a sudden knock upon the door may bring her fully awake within moments. This gentle readiness has become part of her life, as ordinary as preparing bread or sweeping the floor. Imagine living in a world where important news almost always arrives on foot. There are no ringing telephones, no messages carried through wires, no flashing lights outside the window. If a family needs help, someone must leave their own warm bed, step into the cold darkness, and walk to the midwife's cottage. Sometimes the journey is only a few minutes. Sometimes it stretches for several miles along muddy lanes or frozen paths. As the hours pass, the moon climbs higher into the sky. Its pale light washes softly across fields of barley and wheat, silvering every blade of grass touched by dew. Wooden fences cast long, quiet shadows. The village church, standing at the center of the community, watches over sleeping cottages with its dark bell tower rising above the rooftops. Church bells shape much of daily life during the 18th century. They announce worship. They mark funerals. They celebrate weddings. They warn of fire. They even help people judge the passing hours. But during the deepest part of the night, even the bells remain silent. Only time itself continues its slow and gentle journey. Picture yourself lying beneath thick wool blankets inside the little cottage. The air has grown cooler since evening. Without adding fresh wood to the fire, the warmth gradually fades. Yet thick stone walls and tightly shuttered windows protect the room from the cold breeze outside. The midwife shifts slightly beneath her blankets. Her hands, rough from years of work, rest peacefully beside her. They are the hands of someone accustomed to labor. They knead bread. They wash linen. They gather herbs. They comfort frightened mothers. They cradle newborn children. Few people outside the village will ever know her name. Yet within these surrounding farms and cottages, nearly every family has depended upon her at some point. Many babies who will one day become farmers, blacksmiths, teachers, weavers, shepherds, or mothers themselves first opened their eyes while this quiet woman stood nearby. History rarely remembers such people. Yet ordinary lives often leave the deepest marks upon a community. As the night continues, clouds slowly drift across the moon. Darkness briefly deepens. A gentle wind brushes against the cottage roof, making the thatch whisper softly above her sleeping head. The sound is familiar. Every season has its own voice. Spring carries gentle rain. Summer brings insects and warm breezes. Autumn rustles with falling leaves. Winter creaks with frost settling into timber and stone. The midwife knows each sound so well that she can often guess the weather before stepping outside. Her work depends upon understanding nature. Heavy rain may delay a messenger. Snow may make distant cottages difficult to reach. Flooded streams may force travelers onto longer routes. Even the condition of the moon can matter, simply because brighter nights make walking safer. Contrary to old stories repeated for generations, 18th century midwives do not rely upon magical powers. Their greatest tools are experience, observation, steady hands, and calm voices. Most have learned through long apprenticeships, watching older women assist countless births before gradually taking responsibility themselves. Knowledge passes quietly from one generation to another. There are no formal classrooms in many rural communities. Lessons happen beside fireplaces, within cottages, and during long nights exactly like this one. Imagine sitting beside an older midwife many years earlier. You watch carefully. You hand over folded linens. You fetch warm water. You learn when to remain silent. You learn when to offer encouragement. Perhaps most importantly, you learn patience. Birth cannot be hurried. Nature follows its own rhythm. That lesson remains with the young apprentice long after she becomes the village's trusted midwife. The hours drift onward. Near midnight, a light rain begins to fall. It arrives gently, tapping softly against the roof. Drops gather along the edges of wooden shutters before slipping quietly to the ground. The smell of wet earth soon fills the cool night air. Inside, the midwife sleeps through the familiar sound. Rain alone is no cause for concern. Indeed, many farmers welcome it. Fields drink deeply, gardens flourish, livestock find greener pasture after steady showers. By morning, the village lanes will likely be muddy once again. Few roads during the 18th century are paved outside larger towns. Most are simple dirt tracks, shaped by countless wagon wheels, horses, and footsteps. After heavy rain, they become slippery and uneven. Traveling at night requires care. The midwife understands every bend in these local paths. She knows where puddles gather. She knows which bridges become dangerous after storms. She knows which farms keep lanterns burning longest. This knowledge has been earned through years of walking. There is no printed map hanging upon her wall. The countryside itself has become her map. Every oak tree, every stone wall, every stream crossing, every distant hill, each has quietly found its place in her memory. You find yourself wandering those paths in your imagination. The air feels cool against your face. Your boots press gently into damp soil. Ahead, a small lantern glows warmly through the darkness. Perhaps another farmhouse still has someone awake, rocking a restless infant or tending to a sick family member. Illness and childbirth rarely keep convenient hours. The village understands this. Neighbors often help one another whenever possible. A messenger sent for the midwife may borrow a neighbor's horse if speed becomes necessary. Another family may lend blankets or prepare warm broth. Communities survive because people depend upon one another. The midwife herself depends upon this kindness as much as anyone else. She cannot perform every task alone. When she arrives at a birth, other experienced women from the family are often already present. Mothers, grandmothers, aunts, older sisters, close neighbors. Childbirth during this period is largely a gathering of women, each offering practical assistance, reassurance, or simple companionship. The midwife guides, the family supports. Together they wait patiently for nature to complete its work. Back in the cottage, the rain slowly passes. Clouds begin to thin. The moon emerges once more. Silver light slips quietly through a narrow gap in the shutters, painting a pale line across the wooden floor. Dust drifts gently through that narrow beam before disappearing into darkness again. The room remains peaceful. Her basket still waits beside the door. Its familiar contents have not changed since evening. Folded linen, lengths of clean thread, fresh candles, simple cloths, a small knife kept carefully clean for necessary work. Everything has its place. This careful order offers reassurance. If someone knocks unexpectedly, she need not waste precious moments searching. Preparation itself becomes a form of calm. Imagine how many nights have passed in exactly this way. Hundreds, perhaps thousands. Some ending in uninterrupted sleep, others interrupted by hurried footsteps and anxious voices. Yet each evening begins with the same quiet routine. Each night asks the same gentle question. Will someone come? Or will the village sleep peacefully until dawn? No one knows. And so the midwife rests without expectation. Her breathing remains slow and even. Outside, the stars continue their silent journey across the heavens. Long before accurate household clocks become common, many people quietly observe these familiar constellations. Farmers, travelers, sailors, and shepherds all learn to recognize the changing night sky. The heavens become another dependable companion, marking the seasons with patient certainty. Hours continue slipping away. Little by little, the deepest darkness of the night begins its slow journey toward morning. Yet dawn is still distant. The world remains wrapped in gentle silence. And somewhere beyond the sleeping fields, unseen by the resting midwife, a single lantern has just been lit inside another lonely cottage. Its owners are no longer sleeping. A woman has awakened with the first quiet signs that a new life may soon arrive. Far away, careful footsteps begin upon a narrow country path. They are unhurried for now. But with every passing minute, they draw a little closer to the cottage, where the village midwife still sleeps peacefully, unaware that before this long night is over, someone may softly knock upon her door. The lantern sways gently with each careful step. Its small flame, protected behind thin panes of glass, throws a warm circle of light onto the damp path ahead. The person carrying it walks quietly, mindful not to disturb sleeping neighbors. Every footstep presses softly into the rain-darkened earth, leaving faint impressions that will disappear when morning sunlight dries the lane. You find yourself following at a respectful distance, listening to the peaceful sounds that fill the countryside before dawn. The air is cool enough that each slow breath feels fresh. Moisture hangs lightly over the fields, and tiny droplets cling to blades of grass. Somewhere nearby, a stream murmurs steadily, as it has done for generations. flowing around smooth stones without any concern for the passing years. The messenger knows exactly where to go. In a small village, everyone knows the midwife's cottage. She has walked to nearly every home, and nearly every family has walked to hers. Her work has quietly connected the entire community. Many years from now, children who once rested in her careful hands will remember her gentle voice, even if only as a distant feeling from stories told by their parents. The lantern continues along the winding path. Its glow appears and disappears behind hedges and old oak trees. At last, the familiar cottage comes into view. Everything is still. Smoke no longer rises from the chimney. The windows remain dark. Even the chickens inside their small coop are asleep, feathers tucked closely against the cool night air. For a few moments, the messenger pauses. There is always a certain hesitation before waking someone in the middle of the night. No one wishes to disturb another person without good reason. Yet childbirth follows no timetable. When help is needed, waiting too long may create greater difficulty. The visitor steps quietly to the wooden door. A gentle knock echoes through the silent cottage, not loud, not urgent, simply firm enough to be heard. Inside, nothing happens immediately. The midwife has learned not to leap from bed at the first sound. She listens. Perhaps it was only a branch brushing against the wall. Perhaps the wind shifted the wooden shutters. The knock comes again. 3 slow taps. This time, she opens her eyes. The room remains almost completely dark. Only the faint gray light of the moon slips beneath the edge of the shutter. For one peaceful moment, she lies perfectly still. She listens carefully. Another knock. She knows. Someone has come. Without rushing, she sits upright and places her feet upon the cool wooden floor. Years of repetition have made every movement familiar. There is no confusion. No searching. Her shoes wait exactly where she left them. Her cloak hangs beside the bed. The basket rests by the doorway. Everything prepared hours earlier now quietly proves its value. Imagine how comforting routine can become. By arranging ordinary things in ordinary places every evening, she has removed unnecessary worry from the moments when someone truly needs her. She slips into her sturdy shoes. The leather has softened over many years of use. They are not elegant. They are practical. They have crossed muddy fields, snowy roads, narrow bridges, and uneven hills countless times. Each worn crease tells the story of another journey made before sunrise. She wraps her woolen shawl around her shoulders. The night air inside the cottage feels noticeably cooler now that the fire has nearly died. Before opening the door, she reaches for the lantern. With careful hands, she strikes flint against steel. Tiny sparks leap briefly through the darkness. After several patient attempts, a small flame catches the waiting candle. Warm light slowly fills the room once again. The familiar cottage seems to awaken gently. The wooden table, the hanging herbs, the shelves holding bowls and earthenware jugs. Everything returns quietly from shadow. The midwife opens the door. Cool night air drifts inside. Outside stands a young farmhand, hat held respectfully in both hands. His face is tired. His boots are wet with mud. He removes his cap before speaking. There is no shouting. People in small villages understand the value of calm. His words are simple. A woman nearby has begun her labor. The family asks if the midwife will come. She nods before he has even finished speaking. There is little need for lengthy conversation. Both understand why he has arrived. She asks only a few quiet questions. How long have the pains continued? Is this the woman's first child? How far away is the cottage? Has anyone else already arrived to help? The young man answers as carefully as he can. He knows only what he has been told. Many husbands and male relatives remain outside the birthing room itself during this period. Instead, women inside the household observe the mother's progress while someone is sent to fetch the midwife. The messenger has completed his task. Now another journey begins. The midwife checks her basket one final time. Nothing has been forgotten. She lifts it comfortably onto her arm. It is heavier than it appears. Not because it contains complicated instruments, but because every item serves a purpose. Fresh linen, clean cloths, simple oils, thread, candles. Small necessities gathered gradually over many years. Picture yourself stepping outside beside her. The village feels completely different at this hour. Moonlight silvers every rooftop. Rainwater glistens upon stones and leaves. The smell of wet soil rises gently from the fields. Far in the distance, a cow shifts quietly inside its shelter. The world has not yet begun another day. It is suspended between yesterday and tomorrow. The messenger raises his lantern. Together they begin walking. Their pace is steady rather than hurried. Experience has taught the midwife that conserving her strength matters. A birth may require many hours of patient attention. Arriving exhausted helps no one. So they walk calmly through the peaceful countryside. Their footsteps create the only regular sound along the narrow lane. The light from their lanterns stretches across puddles left by the evening rain. Occasionally they pass another sleeping cottage. Every window remains dark. Behind those walls, entire families rest beneath heavy blankets, unaware that life is quietly unfolding elsewhere in the village. The midwife knows nearly every household they pass. There lives the carpenter and his family. Further along, the widow who keeps 3 sheep and a small vegetable garden. Beyond the old ash tree stands the blacksmith's cottage, where sparks fly from the forge every morning except Sunday. Every home holds memories. She remembers delivering children who now run through these same lanes, chasing chickens and laughing beneath summer skies. Time moves gently in a village. Years pass almost unnoticed until children become adults and familiar faces grow lined with age. The road bends towards open farmland. Clouds drift slowly apart once more. Above them, countless stars shimmer with quiet certainty. The messenger glances upward only briefly. The midwife scarcely notices. Her attention remains upon the path beneath her feet. She has walked these roads in every season. Spring mud, summer dust, autumn rain, winter snow. Each demands its own careful rhythm. Imagine the quiet confidence that comes from knowing every turn of the journey by heart. There is no signpost, no map, no painted milestone, only memory. As they continue, the messenger speaks softly. He explains that the expectant mother spent the day much as usual. She prepared the evening meal. She fed the chickens. She folded washing before noticing the first gentle tightening that suggested labor had begun. No one expected the baby to arrive quite so soon. The midwife listens without interrupting. Years of experience have taught her that every birth follows its own path. Some begin slowly, others advance more quickly. No two stories unfold in exactly the same way. The conversation soon fades. There is no need to fill the silence. The countryside itself offers enough company. A breeze stirs the hedgerows. Water drips from leaves after the earlier rain. Somewhere across the fields, a horse snorts quietly before returning to its peaceful rest. You find yourself settling into the slow rhythm of the walk. There is something comforting about moving through darkness with purpose, but without haste. No one is racing against the night. Instead, they travel together with calm determination, trusting experience more than urgency. Ahead, another faint light appears, small at first, almost hidden among the trees. As they draw closer, it becomes clear that the farmhouse windows are glowing softly with candlelight. Someone inside is awake. Someone is waiting. The journey through the silent village is almost complete. Soon, the midwife will step through another familiar doorway, greeted by worried faces, whispered conversations, and the quiet hope that everything will unfold as safely as nature allows. She adjusts her basket gently against her arm, takes one slow breath of the cool night air, and continues walking towards the waiting light, where another ordinary yet unforgettable night is about to begin. The warm glow from the farmhouse windows grows a little brighter with every step. It is not a large house, nor is it richly built. Like many homes in the 18th century, it has been shaped by the needs of the family rather than by fashion. Thick timber beams support a thatched roof, and rough stone forms the lower walls. The garden, now hidden beneath the darkness, surrounds the cottage with rows of herbs and vegetables that will become visible again when daylight returns. You find yourself slowing your pace as the midwife reaches the wooden gate. She pauses for only a moment, not because she is uncertain. Rather, it has become her habit to collect her thoughts before entering a home where emotions may already be running high. A calm mind often helps others become calm as well. She lifts the simple wooden latch. The gate opens with a quiet creak. A narrow path leads towards the front door, where fresh footprints mark the damp earth. Several people have already hurried back and forth during the evening. The rain has softened the ground enough to preserve every impression. Before she reaches the doorstep, the door quietly opens from within. A middle-aged woman stands waiting. Perhaps she is the expectant mother's own mother. Perhaps an older sister. Perhaps simply a trusted neighbor. In many villages, women gather naturally whenever labor begins. They bring practical experience, familiar voices, and steady hands. Their presence offers reassurance during long hours of waiting. The older woman greets the midwife with a gentle nod. No one wastes unnecessary words. Quiet voices seem to belong naturally to the hour before dawn. The midwife steps inside. Warm air immediately replaces the cool breeze outside. The smell of burning oak fills the room, mixed with fresh bread baked earlier that day, and the faint fragrance of dried rosemary hanging near the fireplace. A kettle rests above glowing coals, sending gentle curls of steam into the room. The farmhouse feels comfortably lived in. Wooden chairs stand around a sturdy table, marked by years of family meals. Baskets filled with freshly spun wool rest beside one wall. A pair of muddy boots waits neatly near the door, recently removed after evening chores. Nothing here suggests wealth. Everything suggests careful work. Imagine running your fingers lightly across the polished edge of the wooden table. It has become smooth through decades of daily use. Generations have eaten here. Children have learned to read here. Winter evenings have been spent mending clothes beside the fire. The furniture tells its own quiet history. The midwife removes her damp cloak and hangs it near the hearth so it can dry. Almost immediately, someone offers her a small wooden cup filled with warm ale or herb tea. This simple kindness is common. The journey has been long. The night is cool. Even those who come to help must preserve their strength. She accepts with quiet gratitude, but drinks only a few careful sips. Her thoughts remain focused upon the mother upstairs. No one rushes her. Everyone understands that calm preparation is part of the work itself. The older woman quietly explains what has happened since the messenger left. The first pains began shortly after the evening meal. At first they were gentle. The expectant mother continued speaking with her family and even helped tidy the kitchen. Gradually the pains became more regular. By midnight, it seemed wise to send for the midwife. The midwife listens carefully. She asks a few simple questions. Has the mother rested? Has she eaten? Has the baby been moving normally during the day? How many children has she already delivered? The answers help her build a quiet picture long before she enters the room. Experience has taught her that careful listening is often more valuable than hurried action. You find yourself noticing how ordinary everything seems. Many modern stories imagine childbirth in earlier centuries as constant panic and confusion. The reality is often slower, more patient. Families prepare as best they can. Women who have already experienced childbirth share gentle advice. The fire is kept burning. Fresh water is warmed. Clean linen is laid aside. There is work to do, certainly, but much of it involves waiting. Waiting becomes one of the great companions of every midwife. She has spent countless hours waiting beside mothers while the body quietly follows its own rhythm. There is no machine to measure every moment, no electronic monitor, only careful observation, long experience, and patient attention. The midwife sets her basket upon the table. She opens it slowly. Inside, everything remains exactly as she arranged it earlier that evening. Folded linen lies neatly stacked. Candles rest beside carefully wound thread. Small cloth bags contain dried herbs that may be brewed into gentle drinks to offer comfort. Nothing is unusual. Nothing appears mysterious. Every item reflects ordinary village life. She quietly checks each piece once more, not because she expects anything to have changed, simply because routine helps prevent mistakes. Outside, the wind brushes softly against the farmhouse walls. The rain has stopped completely now. Clouds continue drifting eastward, revealing more stars across the clear summer sky. The village remains asleep. Only this farmhouse glows warmly against the darkness. Picture yourself standing quietly beside the fireplace. The flames move lazily around the oak logs. Occasionally, a small spark rises into the chimney before disappearing. The warmth feels comforting after the cool walk through the night. Near the hearth, a black cat stretches lazily, before curling itself into a tighter circle upon a woven rug. Even the household animals seem aware that tonight should remain peaceful. From upstairs comes the faint sound of slow footsteps. Someone crosses the wooden floor above. A quiet voice answers another. Then silence returns. The midwife smiles gently. There is no alarm in these sounds. Families often move carefully around the house during labor, trying not to disturb the mother more than necessary. She finishes her drink and places the cup upon the table. Then she washes her hands in a basin of warm water. Although 18th century people do not yet understand microscopic disease, many experienced midwives appreciate the value of cleanliness through observation alone. Fresh water, clean linen, orderly surroundings. These practical habits have earned their place through generations of experience. She dries her hands carefully on a clean cloth. Her fingers bear the marks of many years of work. Small scars, calloused skin, nails kept short for practical reasons. These are not the hands of someone seeking admiration. They are the hands of quiet service. Imagine how many newborn fingers have wrapped themselves around those same hands. How many anxious mothers have found reassurance simply because this familiar woman entered the room with steady confidence. History often celebrates kings, generals, and explorers. Yet entire villages place equal trust in people whose names seldom appear in written records. The midwife belongs to that quiet company. Her work leaves no monuments, only families. A younger woman now descends the staircase. She smiles softly upon seeing the midwife. The mother is comfortable, she whispers. The pains continue steadily. There is still time. No one needs to hurry. The midwife nods. Those simple words are reassuring. Many births require long hours. Patience remains the greatest companion of everyone inside the house. Before climbing the stairs, she glances once more around the warm kitchen. Someone quietly adds another log to the fire. Another folds fresh linen. An older woman kneads a little bread dough that had been left unfinished earlier in the evening, partly to keep her hands occupied while waiting. Ordinary life continues, even during extraordinary moments. The world does not stop, because one family awaits a child. Outside, dawn remains several hours away. The fields rest beneath silver moonlight. Cows sleep quietly in their shelters. Horses stand peacefully inside the stable, occasionally shifting their weight upon the straw. The entire countryside seems to breathe slowly beneath the stars. The midwife places one hand gently upon the smooth wooden banister. Each stair creaks softly beneath her careful steps. The sounds are familiar in old farmhouses. Wood expands and settles with changing seasons. Every family learns which steps sing and which remain silent. At the top of the staircase, another narrow hallway stretches before her. A single candle burns quietly upon a small table, its flame steady despite the occasional whisper of cool air drifting through tiny gaps around the window shutters. The younger woman waits beside a closed door. She smiles once more before quietly opening it. Warm candlelight spills into the hallway. The room beyond feels peaceful. The expectant mother rests comfortably, surrounded by familiar faces. The midwife takes one slow breath before stepping gently across the threshold, ready to spend however many quiet hours the remainder of the night may ask of her. The room is warm without feeling crowded. Several candles burn quietly upon a sturdy wooden table, their gentle flames casting soft shadows that sway across whitewashed walls. Their light is enough to see by, but never so bright that it disturbs the peaceful feeling of the night. Outside, the world remains wrapped in darkness, yet inside the farmhouse, everything feels calm and carefully prepared. You find yourself standing just inside the doorway, allowing your eyes to adjust. The expectant mother sits comfortably in a high-backed chair placed near the fire. Thick blankets rest around her shoulders, though the room itself is pleasantly warm. Every so often, she pauses, closes her eyes, and breathes slowly through another tightening that comes and goes like a quiet wave upon the sea. When it passes, conversation resumes. No one speaks loudly. There is no panic. One woman quietly pours another cup of warm water. Another adjusts the blanket around the mother's knees. An elderly grandmother continues spinning wool in the corner of the room, her hands moving with the steady rhythm of long practice. She does not spin because she is unconcerned. Rather, the familiar task helps fill the long hours of waiting. Imagine how different time feels when there is nowhere else to be. No clocks are watched anxiously. No one counts every passing minute. Instead, people notice the fire settling into glowing embers, the candle burning lower, or the changing color of moonlight beyond the small window. The midwife greets the mother with a warm smile. They already know one another well. In villages during the 18th century, relationships are rarely between strangers. The woman before her may have attended church beside her for years. They may have shared harvest meals together, exchanged bread recipes, or helped one another during difficult winters. Trust has been built long before this night. The midwife kneels beside the chair. She asks gentle questions. How are you feeling? Have the pains changed? Would you like a little water? Her voice remains slow and reassuring. There is wisdom in speaking softly. When others hear calm words, they often discover calm within themselves. The mother answers quietly. She smiles between contractions, though there is understandable weariness upon her face. This is not her first child. She remembers the long hours from previous births and understands that patience is simply part of the journey. The midwife nods thoughtfully. Experience tells her there is no need to hurry. Nature is moving at its own careful pace. She places one hand gently against the mother's wrist, not to count with scientific precision as a modern doctor might, but simply to observe her comfort, her breathing, and her general strength. Observation is one of the greatest skills an experienced midwife possesses. She notices tiny details, the color of a person's face, the steadiness of their breathing, whether they seem tired or energetic, whether conversation comes easily or requires effort. Long before modern instruments exist, careful observation becomes an essential form of knowledge. Picture yourself watching quietly from beside the window. Outside, a thin veil of mist now drifts across the fields. The moon hangs low above the distant trees, reflected faintly in puddles left behind by the evening rain. Every so often, a gentle breeze stirs the leaves of the orchard beyond the farmhouse. Inside, another contraction comes. Conversation naturally falls silent. The women wait. The expectant mother breathes slowly. One hand grips the smooth arm of the wooden chair. The midwife remains beside her without speaking unnecessarily. Sometimes, silence is the greatest comfort. After a little while, the discomfort eases once again. A quiet smile returns. Someone offers another sip of warm water. The grandmother resumes turning her spinning wheel. Its gentle wooden hum becomes part of the peaceful soundtrack of the room. Imagine hearing that same steady rhythm hour after hour. The wheel turns. The fire crackles. The kettle sings softly above glowing coals. Rainwater still drips occasionally from the roof outside. The house itself seems to breathe. These ordinary sounds have accompanied countless births over many generations. The midwife rises slowly and walks around the room. Not because anything is wrong, simply because she likes to ensure everything remains prepared. She notices folded linens stacked neatly upon a nearby chest. Fresh water waits in clean earthenware jugs. Extra candles stand ready should the night continue until morning. Preparation creates confidence. Every family understands this. Many of the tasks were completed long before labor began. Blankets were washed. The room was cleaned. Firewood gathered. Bread baked. Such quiet preparation reflects experience passed from mother to daughter across many generations. You find yourself appreciating how much unseen work supports a single night like this. No one thinks only about the moment of birth. Entire days have quietly led towards it. The midwife opens her basket once again. She removes several folded linen cloths and places them within easy reach. Nothing more. There is no display of complicated equipment. Rural 18th century midwives rely far more upon skill than upon instruments. Their greatest tools remain patience, steady hands, observation, and encouragement. She checks the candles. One has nearly burned to its base. Without comment, another woman quietly replaces it. The old candle is not thrown away. Its remaining wax will be saved and melted later, perhaps becoming part of another candle. Very little is wasted. Life in the countryside encourages careful habits. Outside, somewhere beyond the barn, a horse stamps one hoof gently against the straw. The sound reaches the room only faintly. No one pays it much attention. Animals continue their own quiet routines, while human lives unfold nearby. The midwife glances towards the small window. A few stars remain visible through the drifting clouds. She judges that dawn is still some hours away. There is time, plenty of time. Picture yourself sitting beside the fireplace. The warmth reaches your hands as oak logs slowly collapse into glowing red embers. Someone quietly places another piece of wood upon the fire. Tiny sparks leap upward before disappearing into the chimney. The smell of burning wood mixes gently with beeswax, wool, and the faint scent of lavender that hangs drying from a ceiling beam. Nothing feels hurried. Even labor itself seems to move according to the calm rhythm of the countryside. The grandmother suddenly begins telling a quiet story, not to entertain, simply to help the mother relax between contractions. She remembers another winter, many years earlier, when deep snow covered every lane in the village. On that night, the midwife had walked through knee-deep drifts to reach a neighboring farm before sunrise. The story is familiar. Several women smile. The midwife smiles as well. She remembers that journey. The snow had muffled every sound except her own footsteps. The cold had frozen tiny crystals upon her cloak. Yet by morning, a healthy child had been welcomed into the world beside a warm fire much like this one. Such memories remind everyone that difficult journeys often lead to joyful mornings. Imagine how many stories the midwife carries quietly within her memory. Not dramatic adventures, simply ordinary nights, rainy nights, snowy nights, windy nights, long walks beneath stars, friendly conversations beside kitchen fires, the first cries of newborn children, the relieved smiles of tired mothers. These moments become the quiet treasures of a lifetime devoted to serving others. Another contraction arrives, slightly stronger this time. The mother grips the arm of her chair once more. Again, the room grows still. The midwife offers a few calm words, slowly. There is no need to hurry. You are doing well. Simple phrases, gentle phrases. Words repeated countless times over many years because they continue to bring comfort. When the discomfort passes, everyone relaxes once more. The grandmother pours another cup of warm herb tea. A younger woman carefully straightens the blankets. Someone quietly opens the window just a little, allowing cool, fresh air to enter before closing it again against the night chill. The room remains comfortable, balanced between warmth and freshness, balanced between anticipation and patience. Outside, the eastern horizon is still dark, though if one looks carefully enough, there is perhaps the faintest suggestion that morning is slowly making its distant approach. But not yet. The village still sleeps. Most cottages remain silent beneath the stars. Only this farmhouse continues its peaceful vigil. The midwife settles once more into her chair beside the expectant mother. There is nothing to force, nothing to rush. Only quiet company through the remaining hours of the night. She folds her hands comfortably in her lap. The fire glows softly. The spinning wheel hums again. The kettle whispers above the hearth. And together they wait, trusting the slow and patient rhythm that has guided mothers and midwives through countless generations. Outside, the night remains wonderfully still. The rain has long since passed, leaving the air fresh and cool. Tiny droplets cling to the leaves of the orchard, catching the pale moonlight whenever a gentle breeze stirs the branches. Somewhere beyond the farmhouse, a narrow stream continues its quiet journey through the countryside, just as it did yesterday, and just as it will tomorrow. Inside, the fire burns steadily. Its warmth fills the room without becoming uncomfortable. Every now and then, one of the oak logs settles with a soft crack, sending a handful of glowing sparks dancing briefly before they disappear into the chimney. No one startles at the sound. It is simply another familiar voice of an 18th century home. You find yourself noticing how slowly everything happens. In modern life, people often expect immediate answers and quick results. Here, in this peaceful farmhouse, time seems to stretch gently, like the long shadows cast by candlelight. No one watches a clock. No one asks how many minutes have passed. Instead, the women notice smaller changes. The kettle needs more water. Another candle burns lower. The fire asks for another piece of wood. The mother grows ready for another sip of warm tea. These quiet observations become the measure of the passing night. The midwife remains beside the expectant mother. She does not speak continuously. Her silence is never awkward. Years of experience have taught her that calm company can be just as comforting as conversation. Sometimes, the greatest kindness is simply remaining nearby, allowing another person to know they are not alone. Imagine sitting in the corner of the room. You hear the steady breathing of everyone present. You notice the gentle movement of candlelight across the wooden ceiling beams. The scent of lavender hangs softly in the warm air, blending with beeswax, fresh linen, and the faint aroma of bread baked the previous afternoon. Nothing feels hurried. The entire farmhouse seems to have settled into a peaceful rhythm. One of the younger women quietly excuses herself and slips downstairs. A few moments later, she returns carrying another small basket of folded cloths. Earlier in the evening, she had checked them twice, yet she checks them once again. Carefulness is never considered unnecessary. If anything, it reflects respect for the task ahead. The midwife smiles with quiet approval. She remembers being that young herself. Many years ago, she had watched an older midwife with the same careful attention. She had learned not only practical skills, but also the value of patience, neatness, and thoughtful preparation. Those lessons had never been written inside a book. They had been learned through observation. Generation after generation, knowledge traveled from experienced hands to younger ones. The lessons often began with simple household tasks: how to fold linen properly, how to keep candles dry, how to warm water without allowing it to boil away, how to remain calm when others became worried. Such ordinary habits slowly formed the foundation of extraordinary responsibility. Picture yourself walking through the village many years earlier. The woman who is now the respected midwife is still young. She carries another woman's basket rather than her own. She listens more than she speaks. Every birth teaches another lesson. Every quiet journey through the countryside adds another familiar path to memory. Little by little, confidence grows. Not suddenly, not dramatically, simply through years of faithful work. Back in the farmhouse, another contraction comes and quietly passes. The mother breathes slowly, following the steady encouragement of the midwife. Between these moments, conversation returns as gently as birdsong after a passing breeze. The grandmother begins speaking about the coming harvest. She wonders whether the barley will be ready before the next heavy rain. Another woman mentions that the neighbor's cow has recently given birth to a healthy calf. These ordinary conversations are not meant to distract completely. Rather, they remind everyone that life continues beyond a single night. Tomorrow, fields will still need tending. Bread will still need baking. Animals will still require feeding. The rhythm of village life never truly stops. The midwife listens with quiet interest. She has heard similar conversations in dozens of homes over the years. Farmers speak of weather. Weavers speak of wool. Millers speak of grain. Fishermen speak of rivers. Every household measures time according to its daily work. Her own work, however, follows no predictable schedule. A peaceful supper may suddenly become a midnight journey. A quiet afternoon may end with a newborn's first cry. She has learned to welcome uncertainty with calm acceptance. You find yourself appreciating how deeply connected everyone in the village is. Few families live entirely by themselves. If one household falls ill, neighbors often bring soup or bread. If a roof is damaged by a storm, several men may gather to repair it together. When harvest arrives, relatives frequently help one another gather crops before the weather changes. The midwife is part of this web of quiet cooperation. She serves every family. In return, every family watches over her. Someone brings her fresh eggs. Another family offers apples during autumn. A shepherd may repair her garden fence after noticing a broken post. Kindness travels quietly through the village, often without anyone expecting repayment. The candle nearest the window flickers gently. A faint draft has found its way through the old wooden frame. One of the women rises without a word and adjusts the shutter. The flame steadies again. Small actions like these happen naturally. No discussion is needed. Everyone simply notices what should be done. Imagine living in a home where every object has earned its place. The wooden chair has supported 3 generations. The woven basket has carried vegetables from the garden for many seasons. The iron cooking pot has simmered countless stews above countless fires. Nothing is fashionable. Everything is useful. The midwife herself owns relatively few possessions. Her basket, her lantern, several sturdy dresses, warm cloaks for winter journeys, good shoes, clean aprons, perhaps a treasured Bible or prayer book if the family can afford one. Her wealth is measured less by belongings than by trust. Across the village, mothers know that when she arrives, she brings calm with her. Outside, the eastern horizon begins to change almost imperceptibly. The blackness of the night softens into a deep blue. It is still far too early to call it morning, yet the stars nearest the horizon slowly begin to fade. As the morning slowly arrives, the countryside prepares itself without making a sound. Birds have not yet begun to sing. The rooster remains quiet. Even the breeze seems gentler than before. Inside the farmhouse, no one comments on the changing sky. Their attention remains with the expectant mother. The hours have passed peacefully. There has been waiting, conversation, silence, warm drinks, careful observation. These are the ordinary companions of an 18th century midwife's night. They may appear uneventful to an outsider. Yet beneath this quiet routine lies remarkable dedication. Night after night, season after season, year after year, she answers the same gentle knock upon the door. She walks the same muddy lanes. She carries the same carefully packed basket. She offers the same calm reassurance. Not because the work is glamorous, but because every family deserves steady hands when welcoming a new life. The fire settles once more into glowing embers. The room grows quieter than ever. The midwife glances briefly towards the window. A pale ribbon of light is beginning to gather beyond the distant fields. Morning is still some way off, but it is slowly making its patient approach. She folds another clean cloth, smiles reassuringly at the expectant mother, and settles comfortably into her chair once again, ready to continue her quiet watch through the remaining hours before dawn. The first faint promise of morning remains hidden beyond the eastern hills. Although the sky has softened from deep black to a quiet shade of blue, the farmhouse still belongs to the night. Candlelight continues to provide most of the illumination, painting warm pools of gold across the wooden floorboards. Outside, the fields remain wrapped in a light blanket of mist that drifts slowly over the grass. You find yourself becoming aware of the peaceful rhythm that fills the room. No one moves quickly. Every action seems measured. A woman folds another clean cloth. Someone gently stirs the fire with an iron poker, causing the glowing embers to brighten before another small log is laid carefully across them. The kettle begins to murmur again as fresh water warms above the flames. These simple tasks have been repeated in countless homes throughout the 18th century. They require little discussion because everyone knows what needs to be done. The midwife rises quietly from her chair and stretches her shoulders. Hours spent sitting beside mothers have taught her to care for her own body as well. Long walks across muddy roads, carrying a basket through every season, demand strength and endurance. She knows that a tired helper cannot offer the same steady support as one who has learned to pace herself. Imagine spending decades answering knocks upon your door at every hour of the night. Some evenings you barely close your eyes before someone arrives. Other nights pass in complete silence. There is no schedule, only readiness. The midwife has accepted this uncertainty so completely that it no longer feels unusual. It is simply the shape of her life. She walks quietly to the window. The small panes of uneven glass catch the flickering candlelight behind her. Looking outside, she notices that the rain has washed the air wonderfully clean. Every tree appears dark and still against the slowly brightening sky. Far across the fields, a single lantern moves slowly along another country lane. Perhaps it belongs to a farmer, checking on livestock before dawn. Perhaps another traveler is returning home after a long journey. Such small lights are common companions during the quietest hours of the morning. The expectant mother breathes comfortably between contractions. She smiles faintly as one of her sisters adjusts a cushion behind her back. Family members know her habits well. They understand when she prefers silence. They recognize when she would welcome a few gentle words. Years of living together have created a quiet understanding that requires very little explanation. The midwife watches carefully. She notices the mother's color remains healthy. Her breathing remains steady. She accepts another small cup of water without difficulty. These ordinary observations bring quiet reassurance. Long experience has taught the midwife that careful attention often reveals more than hurried assumptions. Picture yourself sitting beside the old grandmother once again. Her spinning wheel has finally come to rest. Instead, she now begins carefully knitting a small woolen cap. The yarn slips steadily through her weathered fingers. Each stitch is tiny, each movement familiar. She does not know whether this cap will fit the baby perfectly. She simply prepares it with love, trusting that someone in the family will find a use for it. In many 18th century households, almost every quiet moment becomes an opportunity for useful work. Hands rarely remain idle for long. Not because people are forced to labor endlessly. Rather, useful habits have become part of everyday life. A shirt is mended, a basket repaired, a length of yarn spun, seeds sorted for spring planting. Even while waiting through the night, practical work continues gently in the background. The midwife herself reaches into her basket and carefully checks her folded linen once more. She smiles slightly. Everything remains exactly where it belongs. Some people might wonder why she checks so often. The answer is wonderfully simple. Habit creates confidence. Confidence creates calm. And calm helps everyone else feel safer. Outside, somewhere near the edge of the orchard, the first bird quietly clears its throat with a tentative note. It is not yet full birdsong, only a single sound carried softly through the cool morning air. Soon another bird answers from a distant hedgerow. The countryside is beginning to wake. You find yourself noticing how gradual sunrise truly is. There is no sudden burst of daylight. Instead, darkness slowly loosens its hold upon the land. The outlines of trees become clearer. Stone walls emerge from the mist. The narrow path leading to the farmhouse begins to reveal itself once again. Inside, the candles seem slightly less bright than before. Not because their flames have weakened. Simply because natural light is quietly returning. The younger women notice this as well. One smiles and whispers that morning cannot be far away. The grandmother nods gently. She has watched thousands of dawns arrive, each one different, each one familiar. The midwife reflects for a quiet moment upon how many mornings she has greeted while away from her own home, more than she could possibly count. Some followed peaceful nights like this one. Others came after long hours that tested every bit of her experience, yet every sunrise carried the same quiet comfort. Whatever happened during the darkness, daylight always returned. Imagine walking home across dew-covered fields after a long night's work. The air feels cool upon your face. Birds fill the hedges with gentle songs. Smoke begins rising once again from distant chimneys as families prepare breakfast. Children still sleep beneath warm blankets, while their parents quietly begin another day's work. The village awakens, little by little. The midwife has made that journey home countless times. Sometimes she carries only her basket. Sometimes she carries with her the joyful memory of another healthy child welcomed into the world. She rarely speaks about these moments in great detail. For her, they are simply part of the ordinary rhythm of life. The fire gives another soft crackle. One of the women places fresh bread near the hearth to warm slightly. Its comforting aroma soon fills the room. The smell mixes with the scent of oak smoke and beeswax until the farmhouse feels even more welcoming. No one has thought much about breakfast until now. Yet the approaching daylight gently reminds everyone that another day is beginning. The expectant mother smiles when she notices the bread. She jokes softly that everyone else should eat while they have the chance. A few quiet laughs ripple around the room. The laughter is gentle, never loud. Even humor seems to move carefully through the peaceful house. The midwife smiles too. Moments like these remain among her favorites, not because they are dramatic, but because they remind her that childbirth is not only about effort. It is also about family, about familiar voices, about shared patience, about ordinary people supporting one another through extraordinary moments. Outside, the sky grows a little brighter. The mist begins lifting from the fields. Tiny drops of dew sparkle upon the grass, wherever the first pale light touches them. The stars, one by one, quietly disappear. The night that began with silence is slowly handing the countryside back to the morning. The midwife gently smooths her apron. She glances toward the window one final time before returning all of her attention to the expectant mother. There is still work to do. Still more waiting. Still more quiet encouragement to offer. She settles once again beside the fire, her calm presence filling the room just as surely as the warmth from the glowing hearth. And as another peaceful dawn slowly unfolds across the sleeping village, the long, ordinary, and deeply meaningful night of an 18th century midwife continues without haste. The sky beyond the small farmhouse window has begun to soften into gentle shades of gray and pale blue. The stars, which had watched silently over the village for so many hours, are quietly fading one by one. A thin ribbon of light rests along the distant horizon, promising another peaceful summer morning. Inside the house, however, the night has not quite ended. The candles still burn. The fire still glows. The women continue their quiet vigil. You find yourself noticing how the room has gradually changed without anyone truly realizing it. Earlier, every corner had been wrapped in shadow. Now the outlines of chairs, shelves, and wooden beams have become clearer. The familiar objects of the farmhouse slowly emerge as daylight gently replaces candlelight. The midwife welcomes this change. She has spent many nights working until sunrise. Morning always seems to bring a quiet sense of reassurance, not because her work becomes easier, but because daylight allows everyone to breathe a little more comfortably. Paths become easier to see. Faces become clearer. The whole countryside feels awake once more. The expectant mother rests quietly between contractions. One of the younger women brushes a loose strand of hair away from her forehead. Another places another folded blanket within easy reach. None of these tasks are urgent. Each is simply another small act of kindness. Imagine how comforting it must feel to be surrounded by familiar faces. Your own mother sits nearby. Your sister smiles encouragingly. A trusted neighbor quietly pours warm water into a clean basin. No one is trying to impress anyone else. Every person is simply doing what they know will help. The midwife has seen this quiet cooperation many times before. She has learned that strong communities are built from ordinary acts of care rather than grand gestures. As the morning slowly arrives, she remembers another dawn many years earlier. It had been late autumn. The fields were covered with silver frost, and every blade of grass sparkled beneath the rising sun. She had walked nearly 2 hours through the cold before reaching a shepherd's cottage tucked against the edge of a wooded hill. When she arrived, she found not fear, but patience. The women inside had already prepared warm blankets beside the fire. Someone had heated water. Someone else had baked fresh oatcakes during the long hours of waiting. That memory returns to her now, not because it was unusual, but because it was wonderfully ordinary. Most births she remembers are like that. Not dramatic, not hurried. Simply long nights filled with waiting, quiet conversation, and careful attention. History often tells stories about famous battles and powerful rulers. Yet most people who lived during the 18th century spent their lives far from such events. Their days revolved around farms, families, harvests, church services, and neighbors. The midwife belongs completely to that quieter world. Picture yourself looking around the farmhouse kitchen below. The fire has burned steadily throughout the night. A cast iron pot now hangs over gentle flames, warming porridge for whoever may become hungry later in the morning. The smell of oats slowly joins the familiar scents of smoke, beeswax, and fresh bread. Simple food, simple comfort, simple hospitality. Life in the countryside rarely offers luxury, yet it often provides warmth in other ways. The midwife herself seldom thinks of her work as remarkable. To her, it is simply what must be done. If someone knocks at midnight, she answers. If someone calls during a snowstorm, she dresses warmly and walks. If heavy rain fills the roads with mud, she lifts her skirts slightly and continues. She does not expect praise. She expects weather. She expects long walks. She expects uncertainty. These expectations have become companions rather than burdens. The grandmother quietly finishes the tiny woolen cap she began knitting during the night. She holds it up toward the growing daylight. The stitches are even. The wool is soft. She smiles with quiet satisfaction before placing it carefully beside the folded blankets. Perhaps the child will wear it. Perhaps another baby in the family will need it later. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is hurried. You find yourself appreciating how carefully people cared for the things they owned. A wooden spoon might serve one family for decades. A quilt could be repaired again and again until pieces from several generations rested side by side. Clothing was patched rather than replaced. Shoes were mended whenever possible. Even broken pottery sometimes found new purpose as drainage in gardens or weights for fishing nets. The midwife lives according to those same habits. Her work basket has been repaired many times. The leather strap has been stitched more than once. Its corners show signs of years spent brushing against stone walls, wooden gates, and cottage doorways. Every mark tells a quiet story. Every repair reminds her that useful things deserve care. Outside, birds have become noticeably more active. A robin begins singing from the orchard fence. Soon, another answers from the hedgerow. Then several sparrows join the gentle morning chorus. The village slowly awakens. Smoke begins rising from distant chimneys as families prepare breakfast before heading into fields, workshops, and barns. A milkmaid crosses a nearby lane carrying 2 wooden buckets suspended from a shoulder yoke. She has no idea that only a short distance away, another family continues waiting through the final hours before welcoming a new child. Life moves differently for every household. The midwife hears the birds through the slightly opened window. She smiles, almost without thinking. Morning birds have accompanied many of her journeys home. Sometimes they are the first sounds she hears after leaving a cottage. Their cheerful songs remind her that another day has begun, regardless of how long the previous night may have seemed. Imagine walking beside her after sunrise. Your boots are damp with dew. The fields shimmer with tiny droplets of water. Wildflowers open slowly beneath the warming light. A gentle breeze carries the scent of fresh grass and newly turned soil. It is a peaceful world. Not perfect, not easy, but peaceful. Back inside the farmhouse, the mother remains calm. The midwife quietly reassures her once more. There is no rush. Nature continues in its own time. The family listens with confidence because they have heard those gentle words before. The midwife never promises certainty. Instead, she offers patience. Patience has become one of the greatest gifts she can share. she notices that one of the younger women has begun looking rather tired. Without making a fuss, she encourages her to sit for a while and eat a little bread. Helping others also requires caring for oneself. This, too, is part of the midwife's quiet wisdom. A tired helper is less able to support another person. The younger woman smiles gratefully and accepts the advice. She breaks off a small piece of warm bread and quietly enjoys it beside the fire. The simple meal restores a little of her strength. No one comments. Everyone understands. The room settles into another peaceful silence. Only the crackling fire, the singing birds outside, and the occasional whisper between family members fill the gentle morning air. The midwife folds her hands once more and watches with calm, experienced eyes. She has learned that not every meaningful moment requires action. Some simply require presence. And so, as daylight slowly spreads across the quiet village, the ordinary yet deeply devoted night routine of an 18th century midwife continues, one patient hour at a time, surrounded by warmth, familiar faces, and the timeless rhythm of country life. Morning now stretches gently across the countryside. The first golden rays of sunlight reach the tops of the ancient oak trees before slowly spilling into the open fields. Dew sparkles across the grass like countless tiny beads of glass, disappearing little by little as the warmth of the new day begins to spread. A light mist lingers in the lowest meadows, drifting lazily above the earth before fading into the clear summer air. You find yourself standing quietly beside the farmhouse window. The world outside seems almost unchanged from yesterday. The same narrow footpaths wind between fields. The same stone walls divide small pastures. The same cottages rest peacefully beneath their thatched roofs. Generations have awakened to this familiar view, and generations yet to come will see much the same landscape. Inside the farmhouse, the fire still burned steadily. Although daylight now fills much of the room, no one allows the fire to go out. It continues to warm the house and provides hot water whenever it is needed. In an 18th century home, the hearth is much more than a place for cooking. It is the quiet heart of daily life. The midwife steps closer to the fireplace. She gently turns one of the logs with the iron poker, making room for fresh air to reach the glowing embers beneath. Small flames rise again, dancing softly around the seasoned oak. She smiles, almost without noticing. It is another familiar task. Over the years, she has tended hundreds of fires in homes throughout the village. Some belong to wealthy farmers. Others burned inside tiny cottages with only a single room. Yet every hearth offered the same simple comfort: warmth, light, and a gathering place for family. The expectant mother rests comfortably between contractions. Her breathing remains slow. She sips another little cup of warm water before quietly thanking everyone around her. The women smile in return. There is no need for lengthy conversation. Kindness often speaks most clearly through small actions. One woman smooths the blankets. Another quietly opens the shutter a little wider, allowing cool morning air to mingle with the warmth of the room. Fresh birdsong drifts gently inside. Imagine listening carefully. Blackbirds sing from the hedgerow. A robin hops across the garden fence. Swallows glide effortlessly through the brightening sky, already searching for insects above the fields. Their songs are neither hurried nor loud. They simply announce another ordinary morning. The midwife has heard this chorus more times than she could ever remember. Sometimes she hears it while walking home. Sometimes while still sitting beside a mother's bed. Sometimes while crossing a wooden bridge with her basket resting comfortably against her arm. Each dawn carries its own quiet melody. She glances toward the small table where her basket rests. Everything remains carefully arranged. The linen is still folded neatly. The candles that were needed during the night have burned lower, leaving small pools of cooled wax around their bases. Nothing appears out of place. Years of habit have taught her to leave every item ready for whatever may come next. Preparation is not something she begins after sunrise. It is something she quietly maintains every hour of every day. Picture yourself lifting that basket. It feels sturdy. The woven willow has darkened over years of use. Its handle has become smooth, where countless hands have carried it through rain, snow, sunshine, and fog. Perhaps another midwife owned it before her. Perhaps it was woven by a local basket maker many years earlier. Either way, it has become a faithful companion on countless journeys. The grandmother rises slowly from her chair. Her knees are stiff after sitting through the long night. She walks toward the window and smiles at the sight of the garden. Small rows of onions stand beside patches of cabbage. Herbs grow close to the kitchen door, where they can be gathered easily. Lavender, sage, thyme, and mint sway gently in the morning breeze. Such gardens are common throughout the countryside. They provide food, flavor, and many familiar remedies that families have trusted for generations. The midwife often keeps a similar garden at her own cottage. Not because every herb possesses extraordinary powers, but because many plants are genuinely useful in everyday life. Mint may freshen a warm drink. Chamomile offers comfort during a restless evening. Lavender brings a pleasant fragrance to linen stored through the winter. Simple knowledge gathered through observation becomes part of ordinary household life. Outside, a farmer crosses the yard carrying a wooden pail. He walks quietly, careful not to disturb the peaceful atmosphere inside the house. He understands that important work is still taking place upstairs. There is little he can do except continue caring for the animals and keeping the household running smoothly. This, too, reflects village life. Everyone contributes according to their abilities. The women remain with the mother. The men continue the necessary work around the farm. Neither task is considered more important than the other. Each supports the family in its own way. You find yourself appreciating how deeply daily life is connected to the changing seasons. Had this been winter, heavy cloaks would still hang near the fire. Had it been harvest time, neighbors might arrive after finishing work in the fields. Had spring rains flooded the roads, someone might have needed to guide the midwife across swollen streams. Every season gently reshapes the rhythm of the village. The midwife has learned to adapt without complaint. Her work belongs equally to every month of the year. She remembers one particularly warm summer many years ago. The wheat had grown taller than anyone expected. Even before sunrise, the air felt pleasantly warm. That morning, she had walked home beside fields alive with butterflies, while skylarks circled high above. the memory brings another quiet smile. Not because it was extraordinary, simply because peaceful mornings often remain longest in the memory. The younger women begin preparing a little breakfast. Slices of coarse bread are placed upon the table beside a small round of cheese. Fresh butter is brought from the cool pantry below. Someone pours warm milk into simple earthenware cups. The aroma fills the room gently. No one sits down to enjoy a grand meal. Instead, each person eats a little whenever there is an opportunity. The midwife accepts a small piece of bread with quiet gratitude. She knows from long experience that steady nourishment helps sustain long hours. Many nights have taught her that she may not return home until much later in the day. There is no certainty, only patience. Imagine sharing such a modest breakfast beside people you have known for many years. Conversation remains gentle. Someone wonders whether rain will return before evening. Another speaks about repairing a fence damaged during the previous week's storm. The grandmother mentions that the apples in the orchard appear especially healthy this season. These ordinary conversations continue because life itself continues. Even while one family waits to welcome a new child, the wider world moves quietly onward. The fire glows warmly. The birds continue singing. Sunlight slowly reaches farther across the wooden floor. The shadows cast by the chairs become shorter as the morning brightens. The midwife notices every small change without consciously thinking about it. Years spent rising before dawn have made her wonderfully familiar with the slow unfolding of morning. She gently straightens her apron, looks once more toward the expectant mother, offers another reassuring smile, then settles comfortably beside her again. There is still time to wait, still quiet encouragement to give, still another peaceful chapter of this long, ordinary night, becoming part of the countless nights that have shaped the quiet life of an 18th century village midwife. The morning settles gently over the village, as though the countryside itself is waking with careful consideration. Sunlight reaches across the fields in long golden bands, touching the tops of hedges before warming the narrow lanes that only hours ago had been hidden beneath moonlight. Tiny drops of dew still cling to wild flowers growing along the fences, sparkling for a few brief moments before quietly disappearing into the warmth of the day. Inside the farmhouse, the pace remains unhurried. The room feels brighter now, yet the fire continues to burn with a comforting glow. Its purpose is no longer only to provide light. It warms water, dries damp clothing, and fills the house with a steady warmth that has comforted families through countless mornings. You find yourself noticing how naturally everyone moves together. No one gives orders. No one rushes another person. Each family member seems to know what small task needs attention. One woman rinses wooden cups in warm water. Another folds blankets that are no longer needed. Someone quietly sweeps a few stray pieces of straw from the floor near the doorway. These are ordinary chores, yet they continue even during such an important night. Life does not pause completely. It simply slows. The midwife has always admired this quiet balance. She has visited homes where babies arrived during harvest, while bread was still rising near the fire. She has answered midnight knocks in the middle of lambing season, when every family member already carried many responsibilities. Yet somehow, village life always found room for one more act of kindness. Imagine living in a place where neighbors know one another so well that they recognize footsteps before a visitor even reaches the door. The carpenter walks with a measured stride. The blacksmith's boots are heavier against the road. The shepherd whistles softly to his dog before entering the village. These familiar sounds become part of everyday life. The midwife herself is recognized by the gentle swing of her basket and the steady rhythm of her walking stick whenever the roads become uneven. She has traveled these paths for so many years that even the village dogs rarely bark as she passes. They know her. She belongs here. The expectant mother closes her eyes for a few peaceful minutes, resting between contractions. The room becomes wonderfully quiet. Only the fire speaks. Its gentle crackling blends with birdsong drifting through the open window. Outside, swallows dart gracefully beneath the farmhouse roof, gathering tiny insects for their hungry chicks, waiting in a carefully built nest beneath the eaves. The midwife watches them for a moment. Nature, she thinks, follows its own patient order. The birds do not hurry spring. The trees do not rush their leaves. The seasons arrive one after another without complaint. Birth, too, asks for patience. That lesson has shaped her entire life. Picture yourself stepping quietly into the farmhouse garden. The earth is still slightly damp beneath your boots. Rows of cabbage, beans, onions, and carrots stretch neatly across the small vegetable plot. Near the doorway grows a collection of familiar herbs: sage, thyme, mint, lavender, rosemary. The morning breeze carries their gentle fragrance through the air. A few honeybees have already begun visiting the flowers, moving from blossom to blossom with calm determination. Nothing about the garden appears extravagant. Every plant has a purpose. Some provide food. Some add flavor to simple meals. Others bring pleasant scents into the home. The midwife often gathers herbs from her own garden before the sun grows too warm. It is one of the quiet routines that fills her ordinary days when no family has called for her help. Many people imagine that a midwife spends every hour attending births. In truth, much of her life looks remarkably similar to that of her neighbors. She tends her own home. She prepares meals. She washes clothing. She repairs worn aprons. She weeds the garden. She fetches water. She feeds chickens. Only occasionally does an unexpected knock upon the door carry her away from those familiar tasks. Perhaps that is one reason the work suits her so well. She understands ordinary life because she lives it herself. Back inside the farmhouse, one of the younger women quietly begins spinning flax into fine thread. Her spinning wheel turns with a soft humming sound that soon blends with the peaceful atmosphere of the room. The grandmother smiles as she watches. She remembers learning the same skill as a little girl. Years later, she taught her own daughters. Now another generation continues the tradition. Knowledge passes gently through families, not with grand ceremonies. Simply through shared afternoons, patient instruction, and years of practice. The midwife reflects upon her own teacher. She can still picture the older woman's calm expression. She remembers how carefully every cloth had been folded, how every lantern had been checked before nightfall, how every family had been treated with the same quiet respect, regardless of wealth or position. Those lessons remain with her even now. Experience is not measured only by the number of years. It is measured by habits formed over a lifetime. You find yourself appreciating how little is wasted. The ashes from the fireplace may later help clean household items or enrich the garden soil. Leftover bread becomes crumbs for chickens or ingredients for another meal. Old linen, too worn for clothing, is cut into useful cloths. Broken wooden handles are replaced rather than discarded. The village survives because people care for what they already have. The midwife's basket reflects that same careful philosophy. The wicker has been repaired several times. A loose strand has been woven neatly back into place. The leather fastening bears tiny stitches where it once tore after catching on a gatepost. None of these repairs make the basket less valuable. If anything, they make it more familiar. It has traveled beside her through years of changing seasons. Outside, the church bell rings softly. Its sound drifts across the fields with quiet dignity. The village hears it clearly. Some farmers pause briefly in their work. Others simply lift their heads for a moment before continuing. The bell marks another peaceful morning, just as it has done for generations. The midwife listens without speaking. She has measured much of her life by those bells. They have accompanied baptisms, weddings, funerals, harvest festivals, and ordinary Sundays. Now they gently remind everyone that another day has begun. Sunlight reaches farther into the room. The candles that served faithfully throughout the night are no longer needed. One by one, the women gently extinguish them. Thin wisps of smoke curl upward before fading into the brighter air. The room feels different without candlelight, not emptier, simply transformed. Night has quietly surrendered its place to morning. The midwife folds her hands for a moment and looks around the peaceful farmhouse. She sees tired faces, certainly. Yet she also sees quiet confidence. Patience has carried everyone safely through the long night. There are still hours ahead, and nature will continue in its own time. No one can command the morning to move faster. No one can hurry the rhythm of life itself. And so the midwife does what she has done on countless mornings before. She remains present. She listens more than she speaks. She offers reassurance with a gentle smile. She waits with the same steady patience that has guided her through years of ordinary nights, muddy roads, glowing hearths, and peaceful village homes, where history was written not by famous names, but by simple families welcoming each new generation into the world. The morning has now fully arrived. Golden sunlight pours gently across the village, warming rooftops that only a few hours earlier had rested beneath the quiet glow of the moon. The mist has almost completely disappeared from the fields, leaving behind rows of barley and wheat that ripple softly whenever a light breeze passes through them. The birds have grown more confident in their songs, filling hedgerows and orchards with cheerful melodies that seem to welcome another ordinary day. Inside the farmhouse, the candles have all been extinguished. Their work is finished. Now it is the sun that lights the room. You find yourself noticing how different everything appears in daylight. The same wooden beams that looked mysterious beneath flickering candlelight now reveal every knot and grain. The stone floor reflects warm patches of sunshine. Even the familiar basket resting beside the midwife seems somehow lighter beneath the morning sky. The long night has gently become a new day. The women continue speaking quietly among themselves. Someone slices another loaf of bread. Fresh butter is placed upon the table. A pot of porridge is stirred slowly above the fire. The comforting smell fills the farmhouse, mixing with the scent of fresh air drifting through the open window. The midwife finally allows herself to enjoy a proper breakfast. Not because her work is over, simply because experience has taught her that caring for others begins with caring for herself. She breaks a small piece of coarse bread. She thanks the family with a warm smile. Simple hospitality means a great deal after a long night. No one thinks it unusual to offer food to someone who has walked across muddy roads before dawn. Such kindness belongs naturally to village life. Imagine sitting beside the farmhouse window with a warm wooden bowl resting in your hands. Outside, children are beginning to appear in neighboring gardens. A young boy carries a small bucket toward the well. Two sisters gather eggs from beneath a hen. Their laughter drifts faintly across the lane before disappearing into the morning breeze. They know nothing of the quiet hours that have passed inside this farmhouse while they slept peacefully through the night. Life continues gently. One ordinary task follows another. That is perhaps the greatest lesson hidden within the life of an 18th century midwife. Most nights are not filled with dramatic events. Most journeys are not dangerous adventures. Most hours are spent waiting patiently, listening carefully, observing quietly, and offering reassurance whenever it is needed. The routine may appear ordinary from the outside, yet within that ordinary routine rests remarkable dedication. The midwife reflects quietly as she looks around the room. She has served this village for many years. She has watched tiny infants become children. She has later stood beside those same children as they welcomed babies of their own. Time moves gently in places like this. Generations overlap like the rings inside an old oak tree. Each one supports the next. Picture yourself walking beside her once more as she prepares to leave. Her basket is repacked with the same care it was opened. Unused linen is folded neatly. The remaining candles are arranged carefully. Every item returns to its familiar place. Nothing is hurried. Nothing is forgotten. The family thanks her with quiet sincerity. Their gratitude is expressed not through grand speeches, but through warm smiles, firm handshakes, and genuine respect. Perhaps they insist she take a small loaf of fresh bread for her journey home. Perhaps someone slips a few newly gathered eggs into her basket. Perhaps, after the harvest, they will send a sack of grain or a little cheese as payment for her work. In many rural communities, compensation does not always come in coins. Sometimes it arrives in food, sometimes in firewood, sometimes in wool for winter clothing. Communities help one another according to what they have. The midwife never measures gratitude by its value. She measures it by its kindness. Before leaving, she steps outside into the cool freshness of the morning. The air feels wonderfully clean after the warmth of the farmhouse. She pauses for a moment, looking across the fields, stretching toward the distant hills. A pair of horses graze quietly behind a wooden fence. Smoke rises lazily from cottage chimneys. The church bell rings once more, its familiar voice floating gently across the countryside. The village has fully awakened. Imagine beginning the walk home beside her. The lane is brighter now than when she traveled it during the night. Puddles left by yesterday's rain reflect patches of blue sky. Wildflowers nod gently beside the path. Butterflies wander slowly between blossoms. The world feels peaceful. Her footsteps are unhurried. She is tired, certainly. Yet it is the comfortable tiredness that follows meaningful work. As she walks, neighbors begin appearing outside their homes. One farmer lifts his hand in greeting while repairing a gate. An elderly woman sweeping her doorstep smiles warmly. A baker opens the shutters of his small shop, allowing the rich aroma of fresh bread to drift into the street. No one asks many questions. The village understands. If the midwife is returning home after sunrise, they quietly know where she has been. There is no need for explanation. Her work speaks for itself. You find yourself appreciating how deeply trust shaped these small communities. People depended upon one another in ways that are difficult to imagine today. The blacksmith depended upon the farmer. The farmer depended upon the miller. The miller depended upon the carpenter. The carpenter depended upon the shepherd. And when new life prepared to enter the world, nearly everyone depended upon the calm presence of the village midwife. She reaches her own cottage at last. The familiar wooden gate creaks softly as she opens it. Her small garden glows beneath the fresh morning sunlight. Mint sways gently beside the path. Lavender attracts busy bees. Rows of onions and beans wait quietly for another day of careful tending. She sets her basket beside the doorway before stepping inside. The cottage feels exactly as she left it. The fire has gone cold. The wooden table still holds the bowl from yesterday evening. A single chair waits beside the hearth. There is comfort in returning home. She hangs her cloak carefully upon its hook, removes her sturdy shoes, washes her hands once more in cool, clean water. Then she opens the window wide, allowing fresh morning air to fill the room. Outside, birds continue singing. The breeze carries the distant sound of wagon wheels moving slowly along the village road. Life goes on. The midwife smiles quietly to herself. Soon she will sweep the floor. She will feed the chickens. Perhaps she will gather herbs from the garden before the afternoon grows warm. She may even rest for an hour if no one comes knocking at her door. Or perhaps another messenger will arrive before sunset. There is no way to know, and that uncertainty has become one of the most ordinary parts of her life. Imagine spending years living like this, never seeking praise, never expecting recognition, simply answering whenever someone needs help, walking familiar roads beneath stars, through rain, across snow, and into countless quiet homes. History remembers queens and generals because they changed nations. But women like this changed families. One peaceful night at a time. One careful journey at a time. One reassuring smile at a time. Their names were rarely written into great books. Few portraits were ever painted. Few monuments were ever raised in their honor. Yet their kindness echoed through generations. Every village carried stories of the trusted woman who arrived with her lantern, her basket, and her calm voice. As the afternoon slowly approaches, sunlight settles warmly upon the little cottage. The midwife closes her eyes for a short, well-earned rest. Outside, the countryside continues its endless rhythm. The wind moves through the wheat. The church bell marks another hour. Children laugh somewhere beyond the hedgerows. A horse quietly grazes in the meadow, and somewhere, perhaps in another village only a few miles away, another woman is preparing her evening meal, unaware that before the next sunrise, she may send someone walking along a moonlit path to knock gently upon a familiar wooden door. So ends another perfectly ordinary night in the life of an 18th century midwife. It was not filled with great battles. There were no royal ceremonies, no famous speeches, no extraordinary treasures. Instead, it was shaped by warm fires, muddy lanes, folded linen, quiet conversations, gentle encouragement, patient waiting, and the steady rhythm of everyday life. And perhaps that is what makes it so deeply human. As the countryside settles into another peaceful day, you leave the little village behind, carrying with you the quiet memory of candlelight reflected on old wooden floors, birds greeting the dawn, the comforting scent of fresh bread and lavender, and the gentle footsteps of a woman whose life's work was never to seek attention, but simply to be there whenever another family needed her. The village continues much as it always has. The seasons continue to turn. The stars will return again tonight. And somewhere beneath their soft light, another calm, patient, and wonderfully ordinary night will begin.